Ushers, would you come down and receive our offering? Well, I have the incredible honor this morning of introducing to you our speaker for today. And she is truly the best looking speaker we've ever had on this stage, in my humble opinion. My wife, Angela Johnson, is going to come up here today. And many of you have been praying for her and for us as a family for the last couple months. She's gone through, honestly, the hardest stretch physically. Here, I'll let you get settled in. She has a lot more props than I normally have, so we got a whole setup for her here. Yeah. I'm a big spender. I got our water from Starbucks today.
I think he thought this might help me have extra anointing if it at least had the Starbucks logo on it too.
Yes. I had an 8-shot espresso drink and she got water, so that's the difference between us.
Oh yeah, I don't like coffee.
But I'm excited for you to hear some of her story today, and I just pray that your heart would be ready to receive what God has, because we have been through a tough season, she has, but she was excited to share her story with all of you. And thank you for all of you who have been praying for her and for us. She had a great week physically, got lots of rest in preparation for today. So sweetie, I love you, and I'm excited what you're going to share.
Thank you.
I don't normally kiss our speakers either. All right, thank you.
I'm so happy to be here with you all. Speaking is not easy. I was thinking, as I was sitting down there, Cliff has to go through this a lot. And I don't know how he does it. But I know that he loves it, and I know that his goal when he comes up here is just to dig and find those little nuggets of truth to share with you every week. So I have to be honest, when he said, "Do you want to do this?" I was like, no. And even up until last week, I felt I don't know if I can. I feel like I've just been emotionally going through a lot, physically going through a lot. And so I said, don't announce it in church, because that kind of still gave me a way out. And then after church last week, a few people, which I kept saying to him, did you tell that so-and-so to come up and tell me that? But a few people came up to me, and what they said, it was the Lord was you need to do this. And I was like, ugh. So if that was you, this is your fault that I'm here. But no, I'm sure you noticed these pictures behind me. And when I look at them, I get emotional, so that's why it's good that they're behind me. But this is kind of, in pictures, just a journey through my life and just different seasons. And I think about that little girl over there, and I think, did she have any idea what God had planned for her life? And my dream for her, and what's funny is when I look at that picture, I think of my 7-year-old London. And I would think, if I could tell London something right now that I could have told myself at that age, what would it be? And I read this quote that I wanted to share with you at the beginning, and if you have a pen and paper, you might want to jot it down because it's that good. Because I think this is something that I would want London to know, and I would want Angela, the 7-year-old Angela, to know. Your faith isn't tested until what you've heard from God isn't matching up with what you're currently seeing in your life. Your faith isn't tested until what you heard from God isn't matching up with what you're currently seeing in your life. Let me just pray. Jesus, we want strong faith. But I feel like we don't want to go through what it takes to get it sometimes. Would you just meet us today and speak to us and help us to take our questions to you and our fears to you. And Lord, help us to open our hearts to what it is that's keeping us from just going that much deeper in our relationship with you, God. We love you, Jesus. Amen. So I grew up in a Christian home. I heard about Jesus, literally, my mom has a tape of me at the age of 2 singing at the top of my lungs something about Calvary and the cross. And so I've just known about Jesus my whole life, and I've had some amazing memories of just being in the church. My dad was a Christian school principal. My mom was a Christian school teacher. Then my dad became a pastor. So I've just been kind of a church kid, Christian, environment kind of kid my whole life. And so at a very early age, I heard about God. I heard about who Jesus was, how he loves us, how he died for us. And I had, I would say, a solid faith in God. And I really just believed everything. I was one of those kind of people that, oh, yep, Jonah was swallowed by a whale. Absolutely he was, right? Little David killed a giant that was 10 feet tall. Of course he did. And I just believed it. And so I remember as I worked my way through my childhood years, I did a lot of things and I wanted to please God, but ultimately I think I really just wanted to please my parents. You know how that is, right? So in doing that, I was pleasing God, but I really just felt like, I just had this very childlike faith, and I'll never forget the day that I was in a doctor's office getting blood pressure taken, and my blood pressure was through the roof, and it was then I began the journey of not just knowing about God, but experiencing God. Have you ever realized that in your own life? Like, wait, I know the stories, I know who God is, I know what Jesus did, and then all of a sudden you bump into a situation and you have an experience that kind of takes you to a new level. And sometimes it may be a new level lower, and then or a new level higher. But for me, I felt like the doctor said, you have kidney issues. You were born with 2 kidneys hooked together, and it actually looks like one big deformed kidney, and everything's intertwined, all those important things, which at the time I didn't even know what kidneys were, and that you needed 2 of them. So I'm like, sweet, I have a good 1 kidney. Great, awesome. But he said as I got older, my kidneys were going to continue to decrease in function. And so at the age of 16, I played soccer, and things just started to go downhill. I remember just not having any energy, and the doctor was like, you're going to probably need to go on dialysis for a little bit. My family was tested. My brother Jason was a perfect match, and my sister Rebecca also was. And so I was on dialysis for 6 months. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's basically like a machine that does what your kidneys do. So you sit on a machine, and it filters your blood and puts it back in you. And I was in there for roughly 4 to 5 hours, 3 times a week. And I was a senior in high school. And I just remember looking around and being like, there's a lot of old people in here. And why am I in here? And so I was the good girl, though. So I wasn't the kind of girl that would ask a lot of questions. It was one of those things where my parents were like, God is with you. He has a plan. He's going to work it all out for good. And so what I ended up doing was kind of stuffing the emotions that I felt. How many of you guys have done that before? Yeah. Where you almost feel like, and for me, it was like what the good Christian girl does, right? You want to make sure that God gets the glory, and you don't want anyone to think that you're like questioning him, so you just, you really don't let like the pain and the fear come out. So this is actually the picture with my sister and brother. That was the night before the surgery, and I look at that girl, and I'm just like, just a lot of fear. And then we have this lovely couple here. Cliff without his goatee. And I was marrying the man of my dreams who had walked through already like some different things with me. But we were like ready for this adventure, like I had in my mind, like I'm going to be like that wife who cooks dinner every night and, has a little apron on. And on our honeymoon, I ended up in the hospital with a really serious infection. In fact, Cliff jokingly asked the nurse if I came with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And I didn't think it was very funny. But I actually began a journey, which I didn't obviously know at that time. I began to have severe pain all throughout my body, and for 2 years, pretty much, I ended up in a wheelchair where they didn't know why. In fact, I remember Cliff and I were praying fervently, like, Lord, just heal her, heal her, heal her. And I felt like God was not answering. And I was just like so confused, like, what in the world? Like, what is this pain? We went to over 10 doctors. And I remember the day we were sitting in the doctor's office and the doctor said the word chronic. And I didn't know if I should swear at him, which I didn't. But I was like, no, you're a doctor. Like, when you go to the doctor's office, you get the diagnosis and they fix you, right? And he's like, Angela, I'm so sorry. Like, we do not know. We've done all that we can do for you, and I think you're just going to be in a wheelchair. And so just remembering Cliff, like, lifting me up to go to the bathroom. And just being like, Lord, this is not what she had in mind. The pain. And I remember like just a lot of pretending, because at that point we were in youth ministry, and I just felt like the Lord would be so upset with me if I let my sadness come out a lot of times. And so I just felt like I wanted to like pretend that everything was good and everything was fine. Sometimes I would just hide away at home and not go out, and just kind of continue to stuff it and bury it. This picture is of my sister and I, and we were actually going through infertility treatments. I had gone through a season of Cliff and I, trying, and it wasn't working, and that's supposed to be the fun part, right? And at first you're like, because once again, you look through that lens of this is how it's going to be, right? Like your expectation, and so you say like, oh yeah, we're gonna have this many kids, and this is gonna be their names, and just dreaming about that day, and it wasn't working. I saw a doctor, and we began infertility treatments where my sister was gonna be a surrogate. And this is a picture of us in the process, and we went through that 3 times. Financially, it was devastating for us, but it was one of those things where we just kept wanting, you just want it so bad. And so you're like, okay, just one more time. And then, I've got my sister who's, I would say, a little stronger personality than I, and she'd go into the doctor's office and be like, are you doing any specials? Like, buy 2, get 1 free, Or like, I don't know, in vitro Wednesday, like Taco Tuesday, but anyway. And it just, like I remember this one time, the last time actually, we were at a wedding. It was literally like 10 or 15 minutes, babe. You remember we were singing at a wedding, and I was about to go out on stage, and the call came from the infertility. I mean, when you're on call, right? And it was like the minute I picked up the phone, it was like, you could just tell. And it was a no. And you're like, Lord. And I remember having to get out there and sing and just feeling just angry. This is actually a picture of me with our kids in Detroit. And this girl right here was in severe depression. Funny how you look at that and you're like, doesn't it look like just the sweetest, awesome, picture? But the devastation and the pain and the anger and the fear and the resentment, and just the numbness that I felt, it was because throughout all these pictures, I had learned how to disconnect what was happening in here with what was going on out here. Because I was that good little girl, and I'm the pastor's wife, right? And so we were in Detroit living on the third floor of an apartment building. We were starting a church in the city, and I remember people come up to me being like, this is so awesome that God's led you here, and oh my goodness. And I remember being like, you have no idea. I honestly don't think I'm going to survive another day. It wasn't too long after this picture, probably 2 months after this picture, that I woke up one day and I had a plan that I just couldn't take all of this on anymore. And that Cliff's life and my kids' lives would be better if I wasn't here, which is just a scary thing. Mental illness is just a scary thing, and the weight of it all. And I remember just having this moment with my pill box, just being I'm done, God. I can't do this anymore. And the Lord spoke, and he just said, I have more for you. Come with me. So I went out and told Cliff, and we headed to the hospital, and that's always an interesting whole journey of just walking in. And every time before that I had walked into an emergency room, it had something to do with my physical health, and this is the first time that I walked up to the counter, and she's like, hi, honey, what are you here for? And I kind of looked at Cliff and put my head down in shame. Oh, honey, she said, it's okay. You're going to be okay. And I'll just say that I never, ever felt God's presence more than I did when I was in the psychiatric ward. Who would have thought? And I never felt less crazy than I did in the psychiatric ward, I'll be honest. You think you are crazy until you actually, no, anyway. But God was there. I remember I laid in the bed and I looked up and I had nothing with me. And I looked up, and on the wall, this is the craziest thing, on the wall, there was this weird painting, and I saw in these really crazy letters the word shepherd. And that's how I felt. Just like a lamb, and the Lord was with me and shepherding my heart and just caring for me while I was there. You see, I think for a lot of us, when we go through pain, especially if you are Christian, you struggle with, God, who are you? And kind of like what I read about, when it doesn't match up, like what you know about God and what you're experiencing about God, they haven't matched up. And so you begin to question it. And you know what's funny for me, and maybe this has happened to you, you question it and then you feel guilty about questioning it because you're like, is my faith not strong? Do I not believe in you? And for a lot of us, we tend to stuff it, hide it. Some of us minimize it. Oh, it's not that big of a deal because look at so-and-so. But you know what? That's not okay because Satan wants us to do that so that we don't move towards it and get healing, right? Some of us, I wrote a bunch down here, pretend, numb, bury it, deny it. We maximize it so it becomes our identity. Do you know anybody like that? Where like who they are is their pain. They can't see Jesus in it at all because it's about them, right? And the one thing that I feel like the Lord has taken me on is a journey of what it looks like to embrace my pain. And in doing so, embrace who he is in my pain. I feel like looking back as I began the process of healing, I had to get really angry and upset and take all that to God. The questions, the confusion, all of it, and it wasn't pretty. I mean, it was like full on, face on the floor, boogers everywhere, yelling, screaming, just all of that had to come out. It all had to come out. It all has to come out for you. And not to be ashamed of that, and to know that God loves you. Like in that wailing and just grieving of what you thought life was going to be, just give that to God and say, like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm confused. So when I say we began a journey, it was a tumultuous journey. In fact, it is a miracle that Cliff and I are together and that we are in ministry today, because it is totally God's grace. I jotted down one of the things when I was just praying about what I wanted to say. First of all, I want to say, I don't want to underestimate the pain in this room, that I know a lot of you are hurting. For yourself, for someone you know. And when I asked the Lord, like, what do you want them to know about you? He gave me some things. And you know what's cool? I have a very bad memory. And he gave me the letters P so that you can remember and that I can remember. I can't see. Promises in the pain. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plan. So these are promises. There's a plan. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. Not to harm you, but to give you a hope and a future. So the promise, number one, is a plan. Number two is his presence. Exodus 33:14 says, my presence will go with you and I will give you rest. And number three is his peace. Philippians 4:7 says, the peace of God, which transcends our understanding. Have you ever felt that peace before? Whew. I think when I've often questioned, am I a Christian? Like, is Jesus really in my heart? Is he like the Lord of my life? I go back to that. When you experience the peace of God, there's nothing like it. And it's from, obviously, his presence. Another verse for that with, I love his peace and presence, was found in, Isaiah, when we walk through the waters. When you walk through the waters, I will be with you. When you walk through the rivers, they won't overwhelm you. when you walk through the fire, you won't be burned. God's presence. So we have a plan, his presence, his peace. Number 4, a platform. I'm on a platform. Who would have thought? John 9 talks about that, just that a man was born blind, and people thought it was because he sinned or his parents sinned. But it says, no, that the works of God might be displayed in his life. Say, wait, what? You want to display the works of God in my life? Really? I realize more and more as I get older and much wiser, because I'm going to be 40. So much of the purpose and the plan for my life is based on my pain. Like, God put me here to experience the experiences I've had so that I could do what he's created me to do. Like, it's actually the purpose that I'm on the planet for. That's another P. Purpose, planet. I'm going to take over your job, babe. Just kidding. So I wanted to just sit on this verse because this verse is, like, recently more than ever been just a huge thing for me. But it's Philippians 3:10, and even thinking about it, I want to cry. But it's the 5th and 6th P. So we've got God's promises in the pain are a plan, his presence, his plan, his presence, his peace, his platform, his purpose is number 5. And Philippians 3:10 says that I may know him and the power of his resurrection and may share in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death. So the purpose is to become like him. When you share with Jesus in the pain and the suffering, you're becoming like him. And you get to know him, and you get to understand him. And Jesus, I think about Jesus and the pain that he endured. Even Jesus, who knew, the Bible says, the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. But he even said, is there any other way? And the last thing, number 6, is the power of the resurrection. We get to experience the power of God in his resurrection. Have you guys seen resurrection in your life? Well, let me just tell you a little bit of mine. I got a new kidney. It's been working for 22 years, which is amazing and an answer to prayer. God healed me, and the resurrection is 2 years after being in a wheelchair. The doctor diagnosed me with gout, which I don't know if any of you guys know what that is, but it's awful and painful, but a pill can cure it, basically. No to babies in my womb, but yes to beautiful babies through adoption. If that isn't resurrection, and the power of God, I see it every day. I left this one just because I really feel like this is something I'm actually in the midst of right now. As a lot of you know, the kidney I do have is starting to get tired, the doctor says. And so the function of it is not as good as they'd like it to be. And so chances are probably, we don't know exactly when, but at some point I'm going to need a new kidney. And one of the things that I want to say to you is, I feel like a lot of us, pain is something that we're in different seasons with it, right? Like I've shared with you all these different seasons, and for some of you, it's dealing with past pain. And for, others of you, it might be dealing with like a present pain that you're literally in the throes of, like the eye of the storm right now. And then this is future pain. This blank canvas, what does that look like for you to embrace that? For me, the thing that I feel like God's been continually inviting me to is surrender to Him, is just the unknown, but the unknown for my girls. Because I feel like a lot of times, like with what I've dealt with before, it's been just about like me. But when you add like little kids to a mix, it's like, wait, well, how the logistics of it, right? Like, and of course, because I'm a woman, I like to control things and figure out how it's all going to play out. And I feel like the Lord's like, you got to lay this down. You got to give that to me. You got to give them to me. And you know what's crazy is laying down like your kids' pain and even their pain for you. Like there's a part of me that wants to hide and not let them in because I don't want them to see me suffer. You gotta lay it down. You gotta lay it down. And here's the amazing thing. When you move towards your pain, you're moving towards Jesus. You're moving towards Jesus. Your faith isn't tested until what you've heard from God isn't matching up with what you're currently seeing in your life. You're going to be stronger. Hold on. Hold on to what He told you. Hold on to what He's told you. He's got a plan. He's with you. There's peace. He wants to use it as a platform to come alongside others and be like, I've been there. I know what that feels like. There's a purpose. We're going to be more like Him. And there's a power when we get to see Jesus heal. And you know what? For me to live is Christ and to die is gain. So if God chooses to keep me here, it's Jesus. If God chooses to take me, it's Jesus. When we left the psychiatric ward, I remember, Cliff, now that's an interesting car ride. We're sitting there. He said, babe, what do you need? I'll do whatever it takes. What do you need? And I remember saying to him, I just need to go home. I need to go home. I need to find her. You need to go home. Some of you are lost in your pain. You gotta find a way back. And here's what's funny. Some of you, when you hear the word home, you cringe, because home is not necessarily a peaceful place for you. But I'm not talking about the place. I'm talking about the feeling of home. The feeling of home. My sister Rebecca is actually here today. And this is cool because Cliff asked me to do this a long time ago, and then I realized she's going to be in town. She's going to be in town, and we like to sing together. And I thought, this is so cool. I get to sing with her. She actually is the match for the kidney that's coming. So we need to make sure she's protected. But one of the last things I want to add is a lot of us, it's hard to go home, the feeling of home, when we think of God like that and very closed off. We don't feel safe, or we feel like we're a disappointment and we haven't really, just moved towards him today. Like, just let that go. And I feel like for me, there were many times when I could not do it by myself. And she was there to help me move towards Jesus. And so it's really special to have her here, because this is what it looks like to bring someone with you as you move towards your pain. My sister and her husband actually just came through a really hard season. So it's amazing that as we sing this song, I just want you to know it's not coming from a place of, we've got it together. It's actually coming from a place of a deep desire to surrender our own stuff and to go move towards Jesus. And I don't know if I'm allowed to do this or not, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you need to do what I was sitting where you're sitting with all that stuff. And I remember one day I just had to come home to the front and just lay before God. I want you to do that if you need to. It's freeing to just let it go. And Jesus is waiting. So as we're singing about what it looks like, what it means to come home and who Jesus is, first of all, this song is written from Jesus' perspective to us. So he's really singing this over you and us today. And just come. Don't be embarrassed or ashamed. Just come and bring that pain to Jesus.